Tonight, we are sitting down for a live interview with Columbia Mayor Brian Treece. ABC 17's Sydney Olson is live at City Hall for us tonight. And Sydney, the Columbia City Council will meet tonight after 2 weeks of protests.
Deb, that meeting is set to begin in just under 2 hours here at City Hall at 7 p.m. Right now, we're sitting down, like you said, with Columbia Mayor Brian Treece. Thank you so much for joining us
Of course.
Tonight. Now, I want to jump in to discuss the protests that we've seen over the last 2 weeks here in Columbia. They've been consistent each night as people are continuing to speak out against social injustice and police brutality, and this is also a discussion nationwide. But I wanted to ask, what do you think city leaders here on a local level, whether it be City Council or the Columbia Police Department, where do they have room to improve?
Sure. Well, you know, the rest of the nation may be having these discussions now, but we started these discussions about 4 years ago when I was elected mayor. We met every month at Second Missionary Baptist Church with members of the African American community, our police department, our city manager, our police chief, and really looked at disproportionate minority contact, civil discourse, how we can have these very difficult conversations that without them being acrimonious. And I think we're seeing the benefits of that now with the peaceful protests.
Now, speaking of discussions, I want to ask, what have your discussions, both with community members and the Columbia Police Department, looked like since these protests began?
Well, I met with protesters shortly after, just hours after that first protest on Friday, about 2 weeks ago. We've had ongoing discussion with the governor's office and other activists as well. You know, many of the reforms that are being talked about across the country are already part of Columbia's policies. We already ban chokeholds. We already require verbal warnings. We already have use of force incident reports and annual reporting and that transparency so that council can look at that. But there's always room for improvement, and we're going to begin that discussion about how we can continue to address these inequities in our justice system.
Which brings me right to my next question. Some of the campaigns going around, such as 8 Can't Wait, you mentioned that Columbia Police Department already does a majority of those, in fact 6 out of the 8 on that list with some exceptions. Where do you think those discussions should begin, since we are already doing those things here on a local level?
Well, all of those policies can be changed by the stroke of a pen, and I think maybe council wants to weigh in that anytime there's a change of that use of force policy, council has to review it and approve it. I think that would be a good start. I think having any type of outside investigation codified, if there's an officer-involved shooting, that's our practice now, but it's not our policy. I think there's lots of ways to improve it. Look, these aren't my ideas. They need to come from that community. They need to come from the protesters and really amplify the voices of that community.
Now, there's also been the idea brought up, including by Councilman Ian Thomas, about defunding the police department. Where do you stand on that issue as far as reallocating money?
Look, we don't improve our police department by starving it. I think we all want better trained officers. We want to keep the veteran police officers that have the experience. Nobody wants to have the lowest reimbursable professional executing our civil code and criminal code and law enforcement techniques. So that's the wrong direction. It makes us less safe.
Now, as marches continue downtown with the protesters, this could be seen as a disruption by some, whether it be local businesses or just people trying to get out and enjoy things as the economy begins to reopen. How long do you believe city leaders will allow this to continue, and is it dependent on things like if they're blocking intersections versus just marching column to column like
Well, look, protesters have a constitutional right to express their views, and as long as they're doing it peacefully, there's no need for us to intervene. And while I regret the inconvenience to some, I do want to protect their constitutional right. And I think the police have done a great job of clearing those intersections, keeping everyone safe, while at the same time protecting their right to protest.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sitting down and joining us again tonight. And I will be sitting in on the City Council meeting tonight, which, as I said, begins at 7 p.m. and I'll be reporting back to you guys with the latest at 9 and 10 tonight. Reporting live in Columbia, Sydney Olson, ABC 17 News.